Hi, this is Kim Pinkney, and welcome back to my 100 days of making comics. This is day 9, and I wanted to open it up with some doodles that I was doing. I wanted to do a dwarven turnaround, and I think I like it better on screen. um, and this was going to be a template that I could trace if I was ever doing dwarven short people, and coming up with different people in the town and whatnot. And it's going to be a mix of races and whatnot. This one, I was playing with the idea of having a half dwarf, half elf, and then I was trying to decide what would it be, how would she look. I figured she would be short, like a short human, with broad shoulders, probably the ability to grow a beard, a longer lifespan possibly. But when I had spoken to some DMs, and they had told me that basically there's no such thing as a half dwarf, half elf. The possibility sounds sickening to them, but I was like, well, maybe. So I also broke out my Creatology comic sketchbook. I had bought this as like about $4 at Michael's, and inside there's a little pouch, and for that pouch there are these cutouts that you could use to make comic book panels. So I'm like, yeah, let me try this bad boy out. So I decided I was going to start with Ace coming down the stairs, since the other page that I have is already focusing on Willa on the outside. So I popped out a couple things, and just to show you what they look like, they're perforated pages, but there's also that little perforation on the outside of it. It's not a smooth transition, so it's going to be probably a pretty rough type comic book page when I get done with it. And I tried to use the inside as maybe a template that I could use to, instead of just the rectangle, but it still came out kind of crooked and wonky, but I was rushing right through it. Now in the scene, Ace is coming down some stairs in the juvenile hall. It's a large round atrium. The floor has this weird pattern on it. There are doors leading to large vaulted doors leading to other rooms, and he's heading down, and then into that next room is going to be like a processing center where the kids are going to have to remove any kind of weapons or contraband or anything like that before they go into the courtrooms to wait for whatever plan that they have for them. And in the atrium are pedestals, and I figure there'll be 4 of them. There could be more. And at the doors are going to be bailiffs. So as he's coming down, and I figure that this is just like a very Spartan design. I haven't really thought too heavily about what's in it, but drawing like this does give me an opportunity to kind of imagine what the place might look like. Anyway, I stopped right there. And then I decided to go back to the computer, and I wanted to do at least a panel or 2 while I had the time, and was working out how I wanted the second panel to look. I was working on Willa and trying to make my thingies work. So this is my process with that. It's pretty boring, but I at least got one little panel done, and that became the channel, not channel, rather, the little thing for the episode that for today, the day 9 image. But what I was trying to do was make an image of the body, so all I have to do is click on it and get it to move into whatever position I want using Keyframe Caddy. The only thing is that I like to work in layers, and the only way this would work is if Keyframe Caddy could do layers. And Keyframe Caddy is just a little app that's within the Flash program. And I found what I wanted to do was not going to work. So I thought I could keep everything linked together and just click on it and change it out. But I was having a hard time trying to get each piece to stay together. And then when I really had to do a body turn, where when you're working in layers, if you have the thing that's closest to you is going to be on the top layer, and the thing furthest away is going to be on the back. So if I was turning her to the side, one of the arms would be obscured, and it would be a layer, and I couldn't just click on it and make it move to where I could make it move to where I want it to go, but it would still be on the incorrect layer. So it's just something I have to play with on my own, and just pretty much if I make all the pieces of the body, I just need to swap it out as I go. I can't rely on it to stay together unless I'm making one solid piece, and even then I'm going to alter those pieces. So it's kind of defeating the purpose of what I was trying to do. It's not a 3D program. I have to keep in mind this is 2D and it can only do so much. So and that is pretty much what I've done today, besides doing laundry and watching some old Dungeons and Dragons cartoons, just to get some research and maybe bring a bullywog in, or maybe a reference or something that I liked from the TV show into this. I also was contemplating motivations. What makes these people do what they wanted, what they're going to do? And I was also going through and trying to figure out in the story different things that I had jotted down, and I started reading through my acts based on the 100 words, and I kind of liked how it was coming out. It was pretty dramatic. I think I just did some free writing based on building up this world and building up some of the things that are going on. But anyway, the Minion Academy is also called the GRR, like grr, Goddesses Rogue it's a long word, Reformatorium, Ten of Swords School, or it could be any one of those things. But I wanted, if they were going to wear an emblem or the school letters, it would be GRR, like grr. So I came up with Goddesses Rogue Reformatorium. 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 That's like 6 syllables. Yeah, say that fast, really fast. 6 times. Anyway, it's easier just to say the Minion Academy. And I wrote down, I found some of the things that I have written down as notes, and I think maybe as I'm relaxing a little bit and jumping around, creating backgrounds and creating people, and sometimes you just need a break from doing one thing the entire time. So I am jumping around just a smidge, and one of the things I came up with was the Minion Academy. The Minion Academy is the body of an immortal, forgotten goddess who resembles, and I want to say it's Athena, and because she's the goddess of wisdom, and being the goddess of wisdom, it makes sense for her to be a school. She's huge. She's like Titan huge, even though the gods weren't Titan huge in the mythology. This one is. She's on in this realm, and she's in. And now she's only known as the Ten of Swords. Few know the true story of why she's treated this way. She's a warrior in armor with 10 ginormous long swords impaled into her back, and she's draped across a mountain. Her arms are pulled in front of her, and they form an arena/amphitheater. They can be closed as a layer of defense, so her arms can be opened or closed. Her mouth is held open, and the students enter through there. She has been betrayed by her fellow gods, and each of the sword is thrust into her at various levels. She's been there so long that a whole town has been built up around her, and she is still alive, but she doesn't move. She's impaled, and her time is different from everyone else's time. we would be moving in real time, but her time may be much slower. So she doesn't talk. She's just there. Uh, and nobody's ever tried to communicate with her. There have been thoughts that she has communicated with people, but these people went mad, so they can't be sure if they were just naturally crazy or if the god drove them crazy, or the goddess rather. Let's see, there is only one god, the Impaler, there is one god. It's called the Impaler, that comes once a century. It takes out the swords, changes her position, it rapes her, impales her again with the swords, and then leaves her where she lays. It's called the changing of the knife ceremony. She cries occasionally, so there are often rivers of tears. She's a young woman, so she menstruates on God time, which is seasonally. So maybe every season or every other season she has her period. So the vampiric creatures and the students celebrate for 7 days. She has been there, and there's like a whole cult and everything that comes down, and they hang out and waddle in her blood and stuff like that. And her blood does have life in it, but it does recede after 7 days, and it is what it is. She's been there so long that a whole world is sprouted up around her. The whole mountain is a hero's playground. The heroes go to certain areas where they can train and hone their craft and amass wealth and fame. Many die, but those who survive have songs about their deeds performed by bards for ages. And this is also where they recruit their minions, the goddess rogue reform school. So that is the place where heroes go. They ransack poor innocent students of their money, and they make a name for themselves, get a good grade, and they pretty much hone their skills. And then eventually, if they see somebody who's like worthy of being hired, they will also go to them for what is it called? Black market items, black market swords and weapons, and just all kinds of weird stuff. They'll come to them. A lot of the weapons are student grade, that are in the school. They're student grade, and they were created by one of the player characters from my D&D group. His father, as a backstory, is going to be a provider of some of the weapons, and all of them are going to have a brand name called Direcant, Direcant, on the weapons that were created by my one of the party members, because I'm trying to incorporate that party and their town into this as well, so I can both write on the party that with the 4 gingers and a dwarf. I want to try to bring their heroes into this story as well. So every now and then there'll be one of the party members contributing to the story, or contributing to lessons for these kids, teaching them to be better minions and better villains. One of them wants to give a class on how to drink like a dwarf, and they'll be going on their spring break to one set. I believe that's what the town is called. They'll be going to one set to hang out with the dwarves for a week and just get drunk and wear fake beards and just torment elves. Things like that. They're just gonna go wild. Students going wild, girls gone wild, ghouls gone wild, just having fun. They gotta let off steam, so everybody's gonna be doing that. Also, let's see. With the Minion Academy, there's the headmistress, and I have her being part of a cult of witches. She is one of the sisters of Bruhane. It's like a secret society of women who can, what's the word, keep a grand dragon at bay. And they wield really great powers. So it was each one of them is in some sort of position of power throughout different realms, and she is over the one school, and she maintains her power and her authority at the school, and she does it with an iron fist. And she is, and another thing about this school is that these are not teachers who are good people. Not all of them are even nice people. So a lot of them are, what can I get out of this? They're all on the take of some sort. So the ceremony where the kids are, where the students, because not all of them are kids, some of them are older, but a lot of them are of high school age, between 17, 18, the youngest being like about 16, to almost 20, 25. These students, it depends on how long they decide to do the studies. And if they do the studies, they can, there's so many different classes that they can do. Warrior class, magic class, they can keep coming back, because the more that you know, the better chance that you have to become valedictorian. So, as we go on, the classes are already in session, and the new class, the freshman class, is coming. Some of them are already there. Some of them already been to a few classes, few courses, and when they are selected, they are pulled from their time, and sometimes special students are pulled by instructors. So during this, when Willa is there with Ace, hands come up and grab them and pull them into the world. And they are not nice hands. Some of them are pretty filthy. And some of the teachers, instructors, and professors take advantage of the students, for good or for ill, and mostly for their own selfish whims. Let's see, so let me see if I can give you what the first act here, for story here. Let's see. Once, let's see, let me give you an example of how these people are. And I'm still working out the kinks in this. Let's see. Alright, I'm going to read from where the courtroom, where Willa has already seen Ace, has been assaulted by her guardian, and pretty much thrust into this courtroom. Okay, and I'm going to probably change a few of these things to see how they work. Writing and rewriting is always fun. Okay, the courtroom is filled with a handful of students. No one notices Willa adjust her hair into a bun to make sure that the knife is well hidden and secure. She sees a handsome Asian boy flirting with a girl across the room. The last one to enter is Ace. He takes a seat across the room from Willa. He smiles at her. She frowns at him. He drops a smile and looks away. The door closes and locks. It's quiet as the other juvies look at and measure up each other. It's quiet. Ace gets up and goes behind the judge's bench and flicks a switch. He pulls out a large trunk. He opens it and rifles through it. He starts throwing things out, strange things. The cute Asian guy took something that looked like a blanket and walked over toward the pretty girl he was flirting with and draped it over themselves for a little privacy. Some of the items land near curious juvies who get up to look, and some start to marvel. Willa just watches. Outside, the last car pulls away, and Atropos's shears close. This is one of the fates that are up in that is up in the alcove, I believe, or the relief outside the building, and that's where Willa's looking up at. And she has some shears that severs the life stream of people, and they're open. And the statue kind of gives Willa a weird smile. But anyway, outside, the last car pulls away, and Atropos's shears close. Ear-piercing screams from one of the honeycomb vaulted arches that would have been an adjoining room startled the laughing juvies from the curious treasures. The juvies heard screaming from one door and then another. They were horrifying. Startled, Ace bolts upright and says, "Shit," and returns to furiously digging in the chest. He's looking for something furiously. Willa watches the kids trying to pound on the door, but finding it hot to the touch, they pull away. They saw smoke creep underneath the doors and could smell something that smelled like burned flesh. There was a fire. It had to be a fire. Willa thought immediately of the Nazi ovens. "They brought us here to die," a kid wails. "They took my cell phone," says another. Finally, Ace found what he was looking for, this weird U-shaped item, and dashes to a far corner near a flag. From behind the judge's bench rises Mr. Palm, who tells them all to remain calm and that he's their guidance counselor, and that they will be handpicked by their instructors, but they ignore him. As they see him standing on a giant clawed hand, they have lots of questions. They still hear the screams, but they're kind of muffled now. They want to know what the screaming is, and the smoke and the smell and the banging on the doors to get out and crying for help. The doors explode open, and various giant hands reach in from the vaulted doors, the ceilings, and even the floor, snatching at the juvies. So it's like pure pandemonium now. All these giant hands are coming out, and they're attacking the kids. The kids fight off the hands as best they could, discovering the weird costume items were weapons. I have Katie Cotton. She's going to be my Amazon warrior, pit fighter. She's chased by hands that grab at her clothing. She screams and rides from her shirt and breaks away with a thud onto the marble floor. Her hand falls on a gnarled wooden club, gripping it as her leg is grabbed. The tip of the club drags with her. It hits a table leg and begins to glow. As she rides, the club develops spikes, and they just create grooves on the ground. She hits the thumb and the index finger of a hand that began to attempt to drag her upwards with the club in her hand as they're dangling her in the air from up above. She falls again to the floor. The glowing club hits the floor. As well as shattered the floor, revealing a starry black space and various holes where some kids fall through. The club catches fire as she swings it and burns other hands. She screams and the club splinters. Some slivers of shrapnel enter into her hand, but she doesn't release her grip. She finds she cannot, as jagged spikes in the handle have impaled her right hand to the club. She didn't feel it until now, as fear and adrenaline took her. The blood from her hand seemed to course through the wood and make more fiery spikes form. The grains and rings of the wood appear as tortured faces screaming in horror, and she watched as her hand and club seemed to become one. It was trying to absorb her as her arm began to turn wooden. A hand grabs her, a giant hand grabs her from behind, and she's unable to swing the club, stopping the transformation. Somehow the hand does something and it stops the transformation. The hand is bumped by another. It drops her as she falls through a hole, but there's another hand that's gloved, caked with blood. It snatches her in mid-air and pulls her swiftly through. So each one of these hands that grabs a student are taking them to their own area. So the gloved hand that grabbed her would be one of the instructors for fighters, the fighting arena. Okay. So that's one of them, and I've got like Ruby, um, and I'm still developing that one. She's got to get Presto's hat, and here's what I've got so far on there. The treasure chest is bumped and knocked into the air by hands, and the contents fly. A green peaked hat falls over Ruby's head. She's temporarily blinded, but sees a totally different room than the one she was in a second ago, and doesn't hear the screams. As she reaches to lift it off, it seems to clamp around her neck. On the outside, Mr. Hand witnessed the innocent green peaked hat change into a green skull with strange runes, and it becomes heavier as it clamps down. It's trying to eat her like a snake. What is it called? When it dislocates its jaw. It's trying to dislocate its jaw in order to devour her. It's not a nice hat. It's just as soon as these kids touch these items, the items change dramatically. Anyway, it's trying to eat her like a snake. Her arms flail out and bolts of skulls hit kids, killing them and turning them into skeletons that attack the hands. One hand turns skeletal. One of the giant hands turns skeletal when it's hit. Mr. Palm laughed. He knew that that owner as well, and knew that both of them would catch hell for this. He sighed, resigned that he will remind them for the upteenth time the perils of the recruiting system. As the hat finally pins her arms, a hand comes and grabs her, thumps the skull, which ceases its devouring, and both are dragged into an open door. So I'm assuming that her instructor is the one that's grabbing her, or his aide. I doubt if he'd do it himself. Okay, and then when I get to Willa, Willa notices that one kid was still holding the bow, but trying to use it like a club. If you've ever seen the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, the bow is it's just a bow with no string. It's yellow, and it has like two sections in this little middle part. And this one kid is trying to hit it, swing it around like a club. She saw Ace watching and stroking the U-shaped thing, and lights appeared where strings would be for a harp. He had a harp. As he stroked, the musical notes floated about him. Difference a comma makes. I need to put commas in anything. Okay. Anyway, it was rough writing. Okay. As he stroked, the musical notes floated above him, and about him. The floor gave way, but he was standing on a note, and it descended through the floor. The notes protecting him from the hands. She had hands on her. She pulled out a little pocket knife and cut the hand before it could lift her. It shattered against the tough skin. She saw the kid with the bow. He was trying to use it as a club, not seeing the light string it had. She ran to him, leaping over closed hands, and snatched it from him, knocking him into another set of waiting hands. And all the kid could do was, when the hand spun around, he could see that the bow changed in her hands as she held it, and now could clearly see light where the bow string would be. And that's the last thing the kid saw as he was being pulled away. She pulled back a bit and saw light escape when the string recoiled. The small dart hit a hand heading toward a blonde girl who darted under a shield. And that would be, I haven't decided who that's going to be. I was thinking that was going to be, Stephanie Newman, but I think I'm going to have Stephanie Newman be there already, so I might end up taking that out. Okay, so Willow watched in amazement as the Black Falcon image fell away from the shield, and a Medusa head appeared in its place when the girl touched the shield. The hand hit by the dart recoiled and shook in pain before it tried for the girl again. This time the Medusa eyes opened and turned the hand to stone. It fell to the floor and shattered. Willa tore her eyes away and pulled back farther and saw a red light that took shape of an arrow. As Willa pointed it, the arrowhead turned into the head of a fiery dragon, and she aimed. When loosed, it increased in size as it opened its maw to bite. Cool, she thought as she hit more. She was dodging hands and shooting them unnaturally fast, and she was having fun until she felt hands on her that grabbed her arm. She was increased in size, dodging hands and shooting them unnaturally fast. And she was having fun until she felt hands on her that grabbed her arm and missed her mark, hitting a juvie who burst into flames and was grabbed by a hand that tried to let him go. She shook off a weird toddler-sized creature. She pulled back hard, and a bolt flew, hitting a hand and burning it. She aimed at a feminine hand, coming right for her. It dodged once and snatched at her. She jumped out of the way. She wished that the bow would fire more than one shot. As she pulled back for the hand, the hand grabbed her by the foot. She loosed 2 dragon bolts at once, and they burned 2 of the fingers off the hand, and it set her free. Okay. She aimed at the hands that have juvies missing some that were, she aimed at hands that have juvies missing some that were too quick, but managed to free some kids. The ugly creature made for her again. She was hitting hands from all directions except beneath her. As she stands above a hole, a hand comes up from beneath her and grabs her. The bow keeps her from falling through the hole on the floor. She can feel her clothes tearing away and ripped to ribbons as she sees little clawed creatures dropping from another hand like grains of sand. So like a hand comes through, and with a whole bunch of creatures in its fist, it just drops creatures on her like grains of sand. They scratch and pull at Willa and the bow in her bow hand and her free arm, and they try to hold her free arm, so she can't reach up and pull on the bow. She's about to lose her grip on the bow as she feels them trying to tickle her armpit, scratching her arm and breast, then feels something pinching her hand to the bow and tries to pull her right arm free. These things are just like, these little tiny monsters would not be outdone. She sees black creatures climb and crawl all over her and down the hand that grab at her legs. So she's got a ton of these little creatures all over her, and they're trying to get her to let loose the bow. And what it is that the bow has a demon inside of it. It's their demon master or something like that, maybe a magic user, and they're his minions. The hand is probably the instructor for that, but is probably unaware that that's happening. Maybe he is, I don't know, but hopefully we'll find out later. But anyway, these little creatures are biting and tearing at the huge fingers, ripping at them, and it's almost like a tug of war type of thing. You got the little guys versus one big hand, another hand. So Mr. Palm almost missed this tug-of-war violation. Minions, no fair, he laughs. And I envision Mr. Palm looking like Johnny Depp. Like Johnny Depp with his little fedora hat or whatever. And he's just chilling, watching all this, in the midst of all this pandemonium. And he's laughing and having a good time just watching the selection process. The creatures step over the girl to attack the hand. It is a tug of war to get the girl who's losing strength. The hands of the creatures bound her legs and made a chain to keep her from rising. So the hand is trying to grab her, and those guys are holding on by the legs. More and more would add themselves and finally became too heavy for the fingers to hold. They all fell into a hole. Willa still held the bow, it would stop uh, her fall again, at least through the hole. At least it would have if the minions hadn't made it wider. So they made the hole wider, and it was larger than the bow. She was overcome by these minion creatures that flowed from a wounded hand. Okay, so, alright, so instead of it being in a fist, the hand was bleeding these creatures. They clawed at her, and the floor gave way to nothingness. Okay, so basically she's been swept away into the other world. And when she wakes up, well, we'll get to that later, but that's Willa's part, how she's gonna be pulled into the world. Alright, well, we'll leave it there, and thank you so much for watching, and watching my progress and how the story is coming about. Hopefully it's growing. I think I gave a synopsis to a friend of mine, and he was like, oh my gosh, where do you come up with this stuff? And I'm like, well, this is stuff that's in my head, and now I get to finally make it come to life. So catch up with me tomorrow and see what else is going on with this story, and see how far I get tomorrow. I have to go back to work tomorrow, so I'm not sure how much work I'm going to be able to put into it, but I know it's going to be at least 30 minutes. So again, thank you for watching, and have a great one. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.